taught you how to do this now.
If it's working, it's by the grace of God. So we are recording. We are recording. No, that's fine. Yeah, he loves. Just be aware of that. And why don't we start with a word of prayer? In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Gracious Heavenly Father, as you have called Israel to be a people of your own possession, so also call us by the words spoken by your servants, our pastors. Be with us as we continue to go through Joshua, as we learn more about the children of Israel and their conquest in the promised land. Strengthen our hearts to know that as your word was with them and fought for them, so also continue to be with us and defend us from all adversity, from the devil, the world, and our sinful flesh. And lead us always to that saving word, your Son, Jesus Christ, who died for us and rose again, that in him we may be brought out of this vale of tears and into your heavenly kingdom, which has no end. We pray all this in your Son's name. Amen. Amen. So, let's sort of summarize what has happened thus far. Chapter 1, God has called Joshua right after the death of Moses. Chapter 1, God has called Joshua right after the death of Moses, and with haste has sent him on a conquest for the people of Israel to go out into the promised land, into the land as God would put it, flowing with milk and honey, with everything they need. Chapter 1, God calls Joshua. God comforts Joshua. God calls the people to listen to Joshua. God comforts the people in these words, be strong and courageous, for I am God. Be strong and courageous, for I am God, and I am with you. With you. Chapter 2 is sort of, chapter 2 is awesome because it's sort of like a movie, right? Joshua sends the spies to go check out Jericho, make sure everything is prepared. And as the spies are in Jericho, the king finds out. The king sends guards to Rahab, whom, I didn't think about this the other day, but there's a reason why the king sent guards to Rahab. It's because her house was a part of the wall. So it's assumed that if these Israelites came, they probably came through Rahab's place. And they came to Rahab. They said, are they here? Rahab said no, even though they were. Now, we talked about the idea of a lie, of what Rahab was doing, the idea of defending her neighbor. And for the sake of Israel, I think God sort of, then she made a covenant. She made a covenant with these spies, with Israel. She made a covenant and said, since I have done this for you, when your Lord takes over Jericho, don't touch the house of my father, my brothers, or me. And they said, okay, what you're going to do is this scarlet cord that you used to let us down, wrap that around your, your window, your door, whatever. Wrap it around. And anybody who's in your household, their blood is on our hands. If they leave, when this happens, their blood is on theirs. we talked about the importance of that scarlet cord. Now we can't just right out say that that's Jesus, but there's a lot of things that the scarlet cord can point us to, which reminds us or comforts us to know, to look back at what Christ does, right? So the scarlet cord is very baptismal because as our baptisms, it protects us from death. The scarlet cord is similar to the blood that was put on the doorposts. So the scarlet cord. In the midst of all this, the spies find out a couple of things that we found out. First off, the nations know who God is. The nations know who the God of Israel is. Why? Because of the works he continues to do. The works he did in Egypt and the works he continues to do for Israel, for the people of Israel. And because of that, guess what? Their hearts are just plain melted away. And the words melted away, the hearts melted away. And on the Thursday class a few weeks ago, we were pointed back, I think Tim pointed us back to Exodus, the Song of Moses, where he said, and God will melt the hearts of those nations away. And it was actually a song that Moses sang. He rejoiced in the death of Pharaoh, as we rejoice in the death of death, or in the binding up of Satan and in the casting out. Now they come back, they tell Joshua everything that's happened, and now we get to chapter 3, which we talked about yesterday, last week. We talked about God exalting Joshua. And so my question to the group is, how did God exalt Joshua? How does God exalt Joshua? And don't be shy. You can continue to bring these worksheets if you want. How does God exalt Joshua in chapter 3? Well, God exalts Joshua by giving him the commands to do what he says. And that is to what? Pass over the Jordan. Now, Jill was awesome in mentioning that the Jordan was a river that is known, the reputation is for flooding, for overflowing. Usually during the harvest time, it says in chapter 3. But I think you also mentioned that the currents are pretty bad.
When the river is high, it was very fast and dangerous.
Fast and dangerous. So that means it's probably also too fast and dangerous to cross over.
And muddy. Oh yeah.
And muddy.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So Joshua is exalted because he listened to the Lord, to the Lord's word, and was able to command a people to go past the Jordan on dry ground, to listen to the words of the Lord. Now, what is the miracle that happened in chapter 3? Oh, and I wanted to show you what I showed Thursday group. Oh, if I can find it again, that'd be awesome.
You said you would.
I did say I would, and
You promised.
I did promise, and I broke my promise. Oh, no,
Not yet, you haven't.
Bible math.
There's one over.
So this is not good for the people online. Those who are watching online, forgive me. I'm looking for a map. You know what? I can't find it. I'll find it next week. Oh, good. They won't see my backside too. All right. So, anyways, what I wanted to show is the geography of the land. I showed them on Thursday, and how close they were to actually the Dead Sea compared to Galilee. There's two seas you need to know about in the Promised Land. You have the Sea of Galilee. I forgot what it's called at this time, but you have the Dead Sea, or the Salt Sea, as it's called this time. In Jericho is, think of this as the Dead Sea. Jericho's like right there, and Jordan's like a little line right there. So it's not as big as the Red Sea that they passed, the Jordan River, but they passed through it, just as God did with Israel in the Red Sea, and they passed through it again on dry ground. And and the people listen. That's the other thing. The people listen. The people listen to what God had commanded them to do. All right, now I'm done talking. We're in chapter 4. Y'all can read it yourselves, and I'll go away. No, we're in chapter 4 of Joshua, and this is awesome. This is a good chapter that reminds us of faith. It reminds us of faith. But before we go into that, let's read. When all the nation, can all of you see this? I can zoom it in, maybe. Can you see it now? Yes. Perfect. When all the nation had finished passing over the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua. So in chapter 3, he told Joshua to take 12 men from each tribe, but we were left there. Here he says, take the 12 men from the people of each tribe, a man, and command them, saying, take 12 stones from here out of the midst of the Jordan, from the very place where the priest's feet stood firmly, and bring them over with you, and lay them down in the place where you lodge tonight. These stones are about to mean something. Then Joshua called the 12 men from the people of Israel, whom he had appointed, a man from each tribe, and Joshua said to them, pass on before the ark of the Lord. Okay, what do we know about the ark of the Lord? We talked about this last time. The ark of the Lord equals the presence of God, right? Pass before the ark of the Lord into the midst of the Jordan, and take up each of you a stone upon his shoulder. These are big stones, probably. According to the number of tribes of the people of Israel, that this may be a sign among you. That this may be a sign among you. What sign? Well, when your children ask in that time, what do these stones mean to you? Then you shall tell them that the waters of the Jordan were cut off from the ark were cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it passed over the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. So these stones shall be to the people of Israel a memorial forever. A memorial. These stones will continue to strengthen the faith of Israel, because these attached to these stones was the saving work that God did for them.
Do they still exist there?
Not sure. I think the Jordan was over flowing when Jill was there, so Jill couldn't see the stones if they were or not. Did they mention anything like that when they talked about the Jordan?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
No,
Um, I'm sure they are, because it says later on down here, they are still there to this day. But of course, when the person who wrote Joshua, he was a little older than we are, so,
Pastor,
yes.
did it say to cross over and set the stones? Or just drop them in the middle? I think they had to cross over, right?
It passed before, yeah,
The ark.
the ark. But they're supposed to put him where the soles of the priest's feet are in the midst of the Jordan.
Ah, okay.
But it.
Yep.
So if you look at verse 3, bring them over with you and lay them down in the place where you lodge tonight. So is that?
Right, that would be
Yeah,
dry
that takes them
land.
with them.
That means, I don't think that's the place where the stones will, here.
I think they were supposed to pick them up where the priest's feet were.
Were they?
And maybe I'm confused, but I always thought
I'm
they took those
confused too
stones
now.
with them into, like, each of them took their stones into the land.
I
where
thought they were put
Right.
in the midst of the Jordan.
It says take them from the place where
Take
the
them
priest's
from,
feet
okay, well, I was always confused.
and bring them over with
Okay, well, they bring them out of the Jordan to where they are in the lodging place, and they are there.
Standing there and touching them.
So they should be right next to the Jordan. Well, thanks for clearing that up for me. I always thought they were in the Jordan.
But, I mean, maybe, because then you look at verse 9, and it's just confusing.
9 says, where does 9 say? And Joshua set the 12 stones in the midst of the Jordan, in the place where the feet of the priests bearing the Ark of the Covenant had stood. See,
So it's two.
It's almost like they take the stones out and then they put them back, or it's confusing. I don't know. Do you know, Glenn?
3 says, take the stones, come out of the midst of the Jordan, place where the priest's feet were, bring them over and lay them down in the place where you lodged.
yeah, but then
They're taking them out of the Jordan and they're putting them all.
they're taking them out, but then Joshua says, set up 12 stones in the midst of the Jordan, in the place where the feet of the priests bearing the Ark of the Covenant
So he's
stood.
got the water.
And
again.
they are there to this day.
Yeah, like
That's where they lodged,
verses 8 and 9
I don't know.
are strange.
Those who are watching online, if you know, please call me and tell me. What do you think? What do you think?
I don't know, that's confusing.
Well, we don't know where they are, but the signs are, the stone, the idea of the stones are important here. Because they're a sign to Israel of the saving work that God had done for them. All right? Wherever they are, whether they're in the midst of the Jordan or in a place where they lodge, we can be on this all day. Maybe there's a footnote. I'm gonna look for a footnote.
2 memorials with
Yeah,
12
could-
stones each.
So 2 memorials.
Yeah, those commemorate the miracle of the Jordan.
Okay.
One in Gilgal and one in the river itself.
So Gilgal
There.
is where they place the lodge. Okay, so that makes sense.
Where is that?
It's in the notes in the study Bible.
Oh, okay.
The Lutheran?
4:9.
Okay.
2 memorials. There we go. Yep.
Okay, now,
Alright.
now we're not confused.
Well, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so then, that makes a lot more sense. Does it?
Yeah.
I don't remember seeing God command him to put up 12 stones in the river, but
Yeah, I don't know. The thing that always confused me is the 12 stones that he puts in the midst of the Jordan in the place where the feet of the priest are in the ark. That's what confused me.
you know.
So anyway, the point of these stones, whether they're in the Jordan or whether they're in Gilgal, notice the point of these stones is to remind Israel of the work that God has done for them. We have things like that too in the church. What do we call those? Now, the stones themselves aren't sacraments. But there are things in the church that continue to remind us the saving work that God does for us. Bread, wine, body, blood,
Baptism.
water,
The cross.
simple water, the cross, right? There are signs that God does that there are simple signs that God does where he attaches the remembrance of a saving work. And God does that for Israel. The other thing to note here is he says, when your children ask in time to come, in Deuteronomy, after giving the commandments, God had commanded them to teach these to your children. It will be on your heads, on your mouth, on your whatever. Teach them to your children. The thing about the Hebrew language is amazing because the Hebrew language is meant to be spoken, right? Is meant to be spoken. I believe it wasn't till after, I think my professor told me this, that it wasn't until after the Babylonian captivity that they added vowels and pointing to the Hebrew language. But it was meant to be spoken. It was meant to be sung. It was meant to be passed down orally. So, again, God says, when your children ask when time to come. And how are the children going to ask? Because their parents are going to teach them everything. And when they walk in Gilgal, or when they swim in the Jordan maybe, they'll see these stones, and they'll think to themselves, why are these stones here? And this is a great teaching moment for who? The parents. It's a great teaching moment for the parents to the kids. For the parents to the kids. So, the ark, before the Ark of the Covenant, the Lord, when he passed over the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. So these stones shall be to the people of Israel a memorial forever. A memorial forever. And the people answered with faith. And the people of Israel did as Joshua commanded and took the 12 stones out from the midst of the Jordan, according to the number of the tribes of the people of Israel. This makes a whole lot more sense, the idea of two memorials. This makes a whole lot more sense. I wish I would have studied more. Ooh, man, but y'all called me. So,
That's my job.
according to the number of tribes of the people of Israel, just as the Lord told Joshua. And they carried them over with them to a place where they lodged and laid them down there. And Joshua set up 12 stones in the midst of the Jordan.
There we go.
In the place where they stood. So the 12 men, the 12 men took 12 stones from the Jordan and went to Gilgal. As they passed by, they took 12 stones, the 12 men that Joshua commanded. There we go. The 12 men that Joshua commanded, as they were passing by, picked up 12 stones, put them on their head, and they went to Gilgal. Then when everybody passed by, Joshua set up 12 stones in the midst of the Jordan, in the place where the feet of the priests bearing the Ark of the Covenant had stood, and there they are today. Joshua did that one. Now, does that make sense?
Yep.
Perfect. It makes sense for me now. Good thing y'all are teaching me. Roles are reversed today. I blame James. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Poor guy. Poor guy. Is he sleeping? No, he's not sleeping. Okay. For the priests bearing the ark stood in the midst of the Jordan until everything was finished. that the Lord commanded Joshua to tell the people according to all that Moses had commanded Joshua. Moses and Joshua, put in this thing, right? Moses tells the people of Israel, from me will come someone who is like me. Now that's we look at that and we think about Jesus, but I think Moses was also talking about Joshua right here as well. The people passed over in haste. Again, I think the author of Joshua here wants to keep in our minds what? Everything is done in everything is done. I'm like that fly from the debate. No, okay. That's the only thing I mentioned. Everything is done in haste. In haste. And when all the people had finished passing over the ark of the Lord, and the priests passed over before the people. The sons of Reuben, the sons of Gad, the half tribe of Manasseh. Don't forget the tribes on the east of the Jordan. Don't forget those tribes, right? Their women, their children, and those men who aren't totally of valor are there. But they took the men of valor with them. They're one body. Don't forget these tribes. They're with them. The sons of Reuben, the sons of Gad, the half tribe of Manasseh passed over, armed before the people of Israel as Moses told them. About 40,000. And I think that's just 1/3 the total armed men these two half tribes, which was 110,580 according to the census in Numbers 26. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people. We were talking about that on Thursday. Could you imagine a congregation of 40,000? Now, could you imagine a congregation of 110,558?
That's only the men.
I could barely talk to 30 people in that pulpit. Thank goodness for Joshua. Thank goodness for Joshua. Ready for war.
Now that's only the fighting men that they're talking about.
That's only the fighting men of the half tribe, of the east. 40,000 ready for war, passed over before the Lord for battle to the plains of Jericho. On that day, the Lord exalted Joshua in the sight of all of Israel. Why? Because Joshua, not only did he command the people, he commanded the people what the Lord had spoken to him to do. The people are relying on Joshua to be God's tool or mouthpiece.
I'm confused by the Moses. How did Moses do in this?
They stood in awe of him as they stood in awe of Moses in all these days. Well, Moses,
10.
in 10,
Yeah.
for the priest bearing the ark of the covenant stood in the midst, everything finished the Lord. It's saying right here, before everything was finished, that the Lord commanded Joshua to tell the people according to all that Moses had commanded to Joshua. So he's talking about not only the tribes of the east, but of their coming into the promised land.
And Moses commanded Joshua to work for him, do this, right?
Let me get that. Until it is finished, our text is well, it doesn't have any notes talking about Joshua. I think here that the Lord commanded Joshua to tell the people according to all that Moses had commanded Joshua.
And because Moses wasn't allowed to go in, so Joshua had to go in to be the
Why
leader
did
of
Moses? Well, I wasn't confused about it either. Man, you're hitting me with all confusions today. Let me see. Let me see. The text does not say just how long, but there are three indicators that the whole nation, 100,000, in haste across it happened in one day. Not to suggest a rush of fear, disaster might strike, but rather that there was no delay in the obstacles. Deuteronomy 16, 3, Exodus 12. Yeah, it doesn't say anything what Moses, my intention here, or my thinking here, is that the Lord commanded Joshua to tell the people according to all that Moses had commanded Joshua. My original thinking when I read it was the Lord spoke to Joshua. This is my thinking. The Lord spoke to Joshua to tell the people as the Lord spoke to Moses to tell Joshua to tell the people. I don't know. But that's my original thinking of this. I can look back at that. I can see what there is. Let me look at Deuteronomy 16:3.
I think what it's showing us is that Joshua is doing things in line with what God commanded in the same way that Moses did things.
And that's my
And so it's,
original
so it's
thinking.
this kind of generational, passing down of
Well,
to do the things that
that's-
God commanded.
That's what I haven't talked about here too. This is a generation of people, these 40,000 people, plus the 110,558 people of Israel. That population of Israel only knew Joshua only knew Moses at that time. They grew up with Moses, right? Most of the people that came out of Egypt, they had either they're still there, or most of them had either fallen away, and they were commanded by God that they would not enter the promised land. It was their children that were. Right? This is 40 years. This is 40 years. So my guess, Glenn, and this is what I had when I read it, was the idea that just as the Lord commanded Joshua to tell the people, according to all that Moses had commanded Joshua, so the Lord also, he did the same thing with Moses when Moses commanded the people. That's my thinking there. Now, that's insofar as what I get with the context going on, if that makes sense as well. Because at the end of this, you can see a parallel here where it says the Lord exalted Joshua in the sight of Israel. You can see a parallel between 14 and 10. That Joshua exalted Joshua in the sight of all Israel. And they stood in awe of him just as they stood in awe of Moses all the days of their lives. And that's sort of what gathered me to think that right here. Now, it's true, I do some of these Bible studies in the afternoon. And it's true that I have a full tummy and I can be tired. I'm also a slow reader. And I also don't retain as much knowledge as my wife does. So when I looked at this, I could have sped through this and put my own sort of thing. Okay, Joshua, God commanded Joshua as he commanded Moses. When I looked at that. So forgive me on that note. Now, I don't know if we're on the ESV or not. Are we? Yeah, we were. Okay. So I'm sorry if I can't totally answer that question, Glenn. But this is sort of my thinking. Is that just as the Lord commanded Joshua to tell the people, so also he commanded Moses to command Joshua and the people.
Maybe Moses said, "This is what you're going to do."
Well, yeah, and Moses was a prophet, right?
And
But-
and God told Joshua, "Now's the time. Now's the day."
That's true. Deuteronomy 16 was about the Passover. The footnote in 10, the footnote in 10 only talks about the haste, unfortunately. And they bring the haste up. They said now, the footnote in 10 is mentioning that there's a lot of people going over they're not going over in haste as if they're afraid of something. They're going over in haste as if they're ready for something. And it's similar to haste as the Passover. So the footnote doesn't really give us a clear answer here. Maybe there isn't. And with that, the best way to respond is I don't know. So it took me 30 minutes to tell you I don't know. Go figure that. I'm sorry. But I do see a parallel between this and this. On that day, the Lord exalted Joshua in the sight of all of Israel, and they stood in awe of him, just as they stood in awe of Moses all the days of their life. They stood in awe of Joshua because Joshua is now in the place of Moses. Joshua now is doing all that the Lord is commanding him to do.
If he's in the place of Moses, then where is Moses at then?
Well, Moses is dead.
Oh, okay.
Moses is dead. The Lord buried Moses. We will see Moses. Guess when the next time we see Moses, guys?
Heaven?
No, well, okay, yes, we'll see him in heaven. But on the mountain, talking to who?
God.
Jesus, talking to God, yeah. Yeah, that's when we see Moses.
Was Elijah up there too?
Elijah was there too.
I want to see what St. Peter looked like. He tickles me.
There you have it, people watching online. St. Peter tickles one of the members. Yeah. Let's not make it awkward. Okay. And the Lord said to Joshua, command the priests bearing the ark of the testimony to come up out of the Jordan. Ark of the testimony is just similar to the Ark of the Covenant. This is the New Testament, the New Testimony. It's similar. To come out of the Jordan. So Joshua commanded the priests to come out of the Jordan, and when the priest bearing the ark, that's important too, when the priest bearing the ark of the covenant came out of the Jordan, in the midst of the Jordan, the soles of the priest's feet were lifted up on dry ground. The waters of the Jordan returned to their place and overflowed all its banks as before. Now I gotta thank Glenn for mentioning, or thank all of y'all for talking about the stones. It is good that we finally know, that I finally know that there are two memorials, because it gives Israel no excuse to not remember what happened that day. It gives Israel no excuse to not remember what happened that day. The people came out of the Jordan. The people came out of the Jordan on the 10th day of the first month, and they encamped at Gilgal on the east border of Jericho. On the east border of Jericho.
There's the 12 stones.
You know, and that's why I wanted to show you the picture. When I find it on Thursday, it's going to take me a while. When I find it on Thursday, I'm going to save it, and I'm going to bring it to this class because it shows how close things are, how close but far these things are, and it shows what I've actually did with my pen on the maps. It shows this sort of thing. You can barely see it, but I sort of reading. I said, "Oh, Joshua went there. He had a conflict there. Went there. Went there. Went there. Boom, 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 boom." Kind of like those Civil War maps, right? It has one better because it's not my pen. Oh man, I feel sorry. I'm sorry, guys, watching online. I've been out of the video. Anyways, So I'll try to find a map, but if you look at the map, maybe I can pass this around. I'm not sick, and my hands are. You can see how close Jericho and Gilgal are. And I was talking about this the other day before we have to end. It's 10:22, so I've got about 5 minutes or whatever. But just imagine Jericho as we let's end this real quick. When your children ask their fathers, right? And then I'll talk about what I was going to say. Joshua set up camp at Jordan, and he said to the people of Israel, he said, when your children ask their fathers in time to come, what do these stones mean? What do these stones mean? Then you shall let your children know Israel passed over the Jordan on dry ground. The Lord your God dried up the waters of the Jordan for you until you passed over, as the Lord God did to the Red Sea, which he dried up for us until we passed over, so that all the peoples on earth, right? Not just the people of Israel, this sign was for who? For all, that they may know that the hand of the Lord is mighty, that you may fear the Lord your God forever. So, let me tell you 2 things. First off, let's talk about the stones, and then I'll talk about the other thing. The stones are a sign to the people of God's saving work for them. The stones are a sign for the people of God's saving work for them. That being said, faith needs an object. Faith isn't just something subjective. Faith is object. It needs an object.
Why were the waters dried up?
Why were the waters dried up? So the people of Israel can pass through without drowning. Faith needs an object. Always. Our faith is in the object of the cross or the empty tomb, right? Faith needs an object. Faith in the Lord's Supper needs the object of the body and the blood, the bread and the wine. Their faith, in some sense, is built upon seeing these stones and remembering what God has done for them, for their forefathers, if their children looking at it.
So is this the parting of the Red Sea?
It's similar to that, yeah. Yep. Now, let me get back to you what I was going to say as well. This is so close to Jericho, their camp. And this is 110,000 people, 558. 110,000 people, 558. A lot of people. Imagine that many people coming up to Jericho. I reminded let's see, I still got time to tell this. Yeah, I do. My aunt and uncle live in Carlsbad, New Mexico. Have you ever heard of Carlsbad, New Mexico?
Yes.
Have you ever heard of the Carlsbad Caverns?
Yes.
I went there when I was like Sydney's age, and I barely remember. I remember one thing: the sandwiches were horrible. But I went there again after I graduated high school with my nephew, who was about Sydney's age. And in that, they told the story about the Carlsbad Caverns and how they were found. I forgot the name of who found them, but he said he saw something like smoke from a far distance, and so he went to go see what it was. And then as he saw what it was, he saw this hole. I don't know how big the hole was, and you can still see to this day the ladder, the chick wire ladder that he used to go down. But it wasn't smoke; it was a bunch of bats.
Oh.
It was a bunch of bats, and so he's like, "There must be a huge cave down there." And I don't know if this is you guys. If it was me, I was like, I am not going down there. I am not going down there. But he went down there. And we took a tour of him going down there. He went down there, and then he lost his, or what happened was I think he got scared, and then as soon as he turned around, he hit himself in the head and lost his light, and woke up, and they turned the lights off, and you could barely see your hand in front of your face. But even so, I'm going back to the idea of how he came across. He said it was like smoke, but it was a bunch of bats. And to this day, you can see the bat flights in the morning or in the evening, or see them coming back in the morning. And it's an amazing sight. Of course, bring your umbrella, bring your raincoat or something. You know why? So, imagine seeing that smoke, but it being a bunch of bats. Imagine Jericho looking out and seeing a bunch of these ants? But no, that's the children of Israel coming closer and closer and closer. Just imagine that. Their hearts are melting away. Their hearts are melting away. Next week we'll do chapter 5. I'm sorry we didn't do that. You're more than welcome to come next Sunday. Please do. Well, next week we'll do chapter 5. This is a good thing. We find out something about the new generation of Israel that we did not know, and this is something that has to happen before they continue in the promised land. With that, any questions? Any comments? I loved today's lesson. I loved going over chapter 4. I learned something. Hopefully, y'all did too. Next week we'll begin Jericho's conquest.
And if I can find my pictures of the Jordan and how high it was and how like anything that we did, I looked on my phone and I don't have them on there anymore, but I'll try and bring those.
That'd be awesome. Please do. That'd be so cool. Okay. Well, with that, let's end with the Lord's Prayer, and then we'll come back next week, same bad time, same. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you, Ben.
I appreciate it a lot.